Hi guys, this is Mattias, and I'm coming at you here with my first flying tutorial for the game Battlefield 1. Now this guide is going to be specific to the attack plane, and I'm using the default loadout, which I believe is called ground support, which is relatively versatile for the planes for as long as you are not being hard countered, especially with the fighter plane. So now my first tip and my first suggestion for you if you want to get into flying in Battlefield 1 is to fix your key binding so it works for you. Now the main and most important thing that I had to change before getting into flying was to assign a key to pitch up. That way I can constantly keep turning without moving my mouse. And yes, I am flying with mouse and keyboard, and this is PC gameplay. So before I continue, I also want to point a couple of things out here. As much as I am a very experienced pilot from several different games and for several years, there's only a small part of that it has to do with planes that is from a previous Battlefield game, and that is from Battlefield 3. I did play that for I think about 6 to 8 months or something, and I never did fly in Battlefield 4. So needless to say, there are a lot of pilots out there that have a lot more experience with this type of gameplay than I have. And since I'm at it, I also want to make a quick little shout out here to one of the pilots that I've learned quite a bit from. His name is Irontjunfisk. He's made a lot of flying tutorials for several years. Most of them, or all of them, what I've seen is from previous Battlefield games. And the only thing that I want to warn you about if you decide to check out his videos is that you're gonna have to live with his Swedish Köttbullar accent, something that you might already have had enough of. A link to Irontjunfisk's YouTube channel will be in the description. So now, a few of the important things that you need to learn and need to focus on in order to start getting kills, because obviously that's what you want to do with a plane once you get the hang of the controls, is that you need to understand how the weapons work. You need to learn how to adjust for bullet drop and bullet travel time. There are very few situations where you can put your aim directly on target and that will result in a kill. Normally you have to aim somewhere next to the target in order for your bullets to connect. Now another important factor that's going to play a big role in your success is your ability to locate your enemies. Now this is a subject that could be analyzed and talked about for days for each individual map actually. But understanding the flow of the game and how people move around on it, there are some simple ways to just understand the basics. And in Battlefield 1, the way I figured it out mostly, or as much as I know it now, mostly comes from playing infantry and playing the objective myself. And the key thing here is playing the objective. Battlefield 1 is a very, very objective-based gameplay. You get a lot of points for it, and killing doesn't really affect the outcome of the match, except for if you are able to kill people to stop them from capping points. Meaning that killing has only an indirect effect of the match outcome. And because of this, people are going to be very, very focused on capturing the points, meaning that you can get a very good indication of where people are at, based on what points are currently being captured and based on what points have recently been captured. Now, when a point that is controlled by your team is being captured by enemies, that is of course the most obvious indication that there are enemies there. Now, based on how fast the point is being captured, will give an indication of how many people are there and how much domination is going on there from the enemy team. Just keep in mind that the speed of the capture point can be a bit misleading, especially if there is a big fight going on in that particular area. So now, aside from just focusing on the capture points, you can also look at the area between one of the points that has recently been controlled by the enemies and whatever point is most likely that they are going to go to, which is controlled by your team. I will also try to talk a little bit about the air-to-air aspect of this plane and this loadout, even though I prefer the fighter plane for that particular role.
There we go.
Now, during the beta, this loadout and this plane was basically useless against the armored heavy tanks. But it's actually pretty good against, like in this case, the light armored car, I think that's what it's called. You just have to make sure that you can keep your aim on target long enough. And also keep in mind that with this loadout, you have a secondary weapon that you can access by pressing the key F if you have the default settings, like this. So now let's focus on aiming for a while, and here is a good example of a relatively difficult air-to-ground target. It is a moving horse, and it is quite far away. So what I do in this case is that I put a few bullets on towards target in order to see where they land, and then as I get closer I readjust my aim by putting it closer and closer towards the target, since the need for bullet drop and bullet travel time compensation diminishes with the decreased distance. Here I do something similar, but this is on a stationary target and a very much more dangerous one, the anti-air on C. Also keep in mind that in situations like the previous ones here, I'm using the zoom, and it is actually very helpful, but to me it was also quite uncomfortable to fly like that because you have a very bad indication of where you actually are, and if you are too close to the ground while zooming in, it's easy to just crash because you don't really know how high up you are. So notice here how I'm putting my aim slightly above where the horse is, but I'm mostly compensating for its movement, which is slightly to the left. Now, some of the first shots there, I actually thought they were going to miss, but as I see that they hit, I use that information to keep adjusting for the horse's movement, and as I get closer, I minimize the compensation for both bullet drop and bullet travel time until I eventually put my aim directly on target. Now in the second example here from the same clip, the first shots that I see landing are actually not compensated enough, and because of that I do not move my aim down to adjust for the decrease in distance. Instead I maintain my aim at the same position until I see that I get the hit markers, and once I do get the hit markers I start slowly moving my aim down. Now the zoom cannot be used while you're in third person, but many times being in third person is actually quite beneficial. If you already have a clear indication of where it's very likely that some opponents are, I many times find it easier to quickly adjust for a target that just quickly appears on my screen.
We have taken objective apples.
Now also keep in mind that another very effective and quite reliable way of locating enemies is from the projectiles of when they're firing their weapons. You can actually quite clearly see when somebody is using their weapons, and several times I've actually been able to pick up a few frags from players that I didn't expect to be in that specific location. So, did you see it? Maybe this footage isn't clear enough, since once it's up on YouTube and you're watching it back, it will be compressed quite a bit, and some of these very important details can actually be lost in that process. So when this clip has finished, I'm actually going to show you that again, but I'm going to zoom in and slow down, and hopefully it will be a bit clearer. Now, what I'm doing here is that I'm killing off people that are on their way from B, which they have recently either spawned at or captured, and I'm able to catch them here in a relatively open area as they're on their way to, in this case, D. So now this scout that was strategically proning in this rock formation, as I'm looking back at this footage, it was actually not him that fired that shot. It was another sniper that gave away the location. And I actually only noticed that as I zoomed in and looked back at this in slow motion. Now when this was happening, when I was playing, I didn't see any one of them. But the moment one of them shot, I quickly put my aim in that direction, and I picked off the first and only sniper out of the two that I saw. Now there is a similar and I think a little bit more clear example in the next clip here.
We have lost objective butter. We have taken objective George.
So, did you see it? Don't worry if you didn't, this will be much clearer on your screen when you're playing the game yourself, without the compression from YouTube. Also keep in mind that when you shoot at certain buildings, they will collapse from it, both walls and rooftops. Now, one of the key things in order to be successful with these so-called strafe runs is that you come from the right distance, or that you have enough distance from your targets when you start, and that you come from the right angle, or that you start off from the right altitude. You don't want to start too low, because then when you put your aim down to hit the targets on the ground, you're going to actually hit the ground if you maintain your aim where it needs to be in order to hit the target. Now, if you start from too high, then the problem is that you're not going to be able to pull up in time without crashing, because you need to maintain your aim on target for quite a while in order to secure the kills. I need to get more altitude and more distance. So yeah, maybe you're wondering who I'm talking to here. Almost all of this footage was recorded while I was live streaming, because I was streaming this live on Twitch, almost all the footage that you see here. Oh fuck, it's an anti-air. So yeah, the pilot's nemesis, the anti-air flak cannon. On this particular map there are 3 stationary ones. One is located here on D, the other one is located on E, and there is a third one located between the two on D.
We have lost objective Freddy.
So yeah, what is there to say about the flak cannon? Basically, it's very easy to use and it's very, very powerful. Now, despite the fact that you've seen me kill a couple of guys using it, whatever risk you take if you decide to use it is mostly not going to come from any airplane. Instead, you are a stationary target for any sniper, any other infantry player, or tankers. Now, what really did irritate me the most was that flak will very quickly disable the plane, even if the player is only able to land 1 or 2 shots. Now, being disabled can many times mean that you are either dead or at least you've lost that plane. Now, in the state that the beta was, if I was a dedicated pilot and I really wanted to focus on flying or have flying as my main thing in this game, I would not even consider buying Battlefield 1. But that's just me. On the other hand though, I am pretty sure that I will be focusing about 70, maybe 80% of my playing time playing on the ground. So to me, it's not that game-breaking overall, but I also hope and believe that anti-air is going to be toned down quite a bit. Now, one of the things that I do, or try to do, when I'm in a hopeless situation while flying, is that I try to get myself over a capture point and try to either capture it or defend it. Now, as a pilot, the weapon that you get is, I think it's a scout weapon, and in my opinion, it's really, really bad. I don't like it at all. Oh. Artillery truck. Anti-air versus infantry. Everything is good against infantry except for some planes. What is anything but bad, however, is anti-air versus infantry. One hit from the anti-air deals 52 damage, apparently. Now, as a pilot on the ground, this weapon that we've had in the beta, at least the only one that I've tried out, is basically like a BB gun, and if I'm able to get a kill with it, or if I find a kit anyway, I pick it up no matter what it is. I don't even check. In my opinion, anything is better than the C96 carbine. So now, the anti-air role of this plane with this loadout is in some situation actually really good, but against a pilot in a fighter plane that is anything from decent or above, you are basically not gonna stand a chance. That is, of course, unless other factors play in than you and the other pilot, which of course is very likely to happen in a 64-player based game. Now, once you get the hang of the basics of flying, when you are fighting a relatively inexperienced pilot and you're just trying to take them down, normally the hardest thing to do is to find the lead on the enemy plane and land enough shots to kill it. Obviously the bombers are the easiest to hit, and the fighter that I'm chasing here is the hardest one. Now, I'm not going to try to go in depth with air-to-air or dogfights in this particular tutorial. But if you feel like you're really having trouble landing shots on a plane that you're chasing, then perhaps watching videos like this could help you out a bit. Also keep in mind that the other two planes, aside from this fighter that I'm chasing here, can have a passenger shooting backwards. And they can be really, really dangerous, especially the bombers, but even the attack plane that I'm flying myself. So here's another little quick tip that I want to share with you also, is that when I'm turning like I'm doing here, I also either hold in D if I'm turning to the right, or I'm holding A if I'm turning to the left, like here. That's one of the things that I learned from Irontjunfisk that I mentioned earlier, and according to him, it makes you turn a little bit faster. So yes, even though this has become a rather long video, there is a lot more to talk about when it comes to the air gameplay of Battlefield 1, and I'm only in the very beginning of the learning curve myself. Now, if you have a couple of tips or some suggestions, then please share it in the comment section. I might be able to come out with another video about flying, because I do have quite a lot of material left from the open beta that I don't really know what to do with. I might just upload it as it is. Anyway, that's all for this video. Thank you all for watching.